The millionaire adoptive father's dark secrets unraveled a son's discovery that changed everything. The grandfather clock in Victor's study chimed midnight, its deep resonance echoing through the empty corridors of the Reeves mansion. Alex stood motionless, his hand hovering over the ornate painting that concealed his adoptive father's safe. The house was silent, save for the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the rapid beating of Alex's heart. He shouldn't be here. Every fiber of his being screamed that this was wrong, a betrayal of the man who had given him everything. Yet the gnawing suspicion that had taken root in his mind over the past few weeks refused to be silenced. Something was amiss in the Reeves empire, and the answers lay behind this painting. With trembling fingers, Alex grasped the edge of the frame and swung it open. The safe's metallic surface gleamed in the dim light, its keypad awaiting the code that would unlock its secrets. Alex hesitated for a moment, then input the numbers 070485, his own birthday. The safe beeped softly, and the door swung open. Inside, neatly stacked folders and documents filled the space. Alex reached for the topmost file, his breath catching as he read the label Operation Fallen Heroes with growing trepidation. He opened the folder and began to read. As his eyes scanned the pages, Alex's world tilted on its axis. Spreadsheets detailing payoffs, memos outlining strategies to exploit legal loopholes, and most damning of all, a list of names disabled veterans who had been systematically taken advantage of in Victor's relentless pursuit of wealth and power. The file slipped from Alex's numb fingers, scattering papers across the polished floor. He staggered back, his mind reeling from the implications of what he'd discovered. In that moment, as the clock struck midnight, Alex knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Victor Reeves stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, his piercing blue eyes surveying the city skyline he'd come to dominate. At 62, he cut an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with a shock of silver hair that seemed to catch the light. But it was his eyes that commanded attention, eyes that had seen war, hardship, and ultimately triumph. 30 years ago, those same eyes had stared blankly at a hospital ceiling as Victor lay broken, both physically and spiritually. The explosion that had taken his left leg below the knee had also shattered his dreams of a military career. For months he'd wallowed in despair, watching his fellow veterans struggle with their own demons, many succumbing to addiction and homelessness. It was during those dark days that Victor made a vow he would rise from the ashes of his old life and build something extraordinary, something that would ensure no veteran would ever face the struggles he and his comrades had endured. With nothing but a small military pension and an idea, Victor threw himself into the world of business. He started small, offering financial advice to fellow veterans, helping them navigate the complex world of benefits and investments. His natural charisma and sharp mind quickly earned him a reputation as a man who got results. As his client base grew, so did his ambitions. Victor expanded into real estate, focusing on developing affordable housing for veterans and their families. It was a risky move, but one that paid off handsomely. Within a decade, Reeves Enterprises had become a household name, synonymous with veteran support and community development. But success, Victor discovered, was a demanding mistress. The higher he climbed, the more he found himself making compromises. Small ones, at first a zoning law bent here, a politician's palm greased there. But as the stakes grew higher, so did the ethical lines he was willing to cross. By the time Alex entered his life, Victor Reeves was a man of two faces. To the public, he was a philanthropist, a champion of veterans' rights, and a self-made billionaire. Behind closed doors, he was a ruthless businessman who would stop at nothing to expand his empire. It was on a rainy Tuesday afternoon that Victor first met Alex. He'd been visiting one of his low-income housing developments, more for a photo op than genuine concern, when he spotted a skinny 10-year-old boy huddled in a doorway, soaked to the bone. Something about the boy's defiant glare, even in the face of obvious hardship, struck a chord in Victor. Perhaps he saw a reflection of his younger self, or maybe it was a moment of genuine compassion. Whatever the reason, Victor found himself kneeling beside the boy, offering his umbrella and a chance at a better life. Alex had been bouncing between foster homes since the age of 6, when his parents died in a car accident. Life had taught him to be wary of adults bearing gifts, but there was something in Victor's eyes, a mix of understanding and challenge, that resonated with the young boy. From that day forward, Alex became a fixture in Victor's life. At first, it was small gestures ensuring the boy had proper clothes, food, and access to good schools. But as the years passed, Victor found himself growing genuinely fond of Alex. The boy's quick wit and tenacious spirit reminded Victor of himself in his younger days. By the time Alex turned 18, Victor had officially adopted him, much to the surprise of his business associates and the media. Many speculated it was a publicity stunt, a way to soften Victor's image as he faced increasing scrutiny over his business practices. But those close to them saw a genuine bond forming between the gruff businessman and his protege. Alex thrived under Victor's tutelage. He excelled in school, earning a double major in business and social work from an Ivy League university. Where Victor was all hard edges and ruthless efficiency, Alex brought a softer touch and a genuine desire to help others. It seemed the perfect combination to lead Reeves Enterprises into a new era. But as Alex grew into a young man, Victor began grooming him to take over the company. He taught Alex every trick he knew, from reading market trends to negotiating cutthroat deals. But he also instilled in him the importance of their mission to support and uplift veterans and their families. "Never forget where we came from," son Victor would often say, tapping his prosthetic leg. "Everything we do for those who served." Alex took these lessons to heart, throwing himself into charity work and community outreach programs. He became the public face of Reeves Enterprises' philanthropic efforts, his boyish charm and genuine compassion winning over even the company's harshest critics. But while Alex was busy cutting ribbons and shaking hands, Victor was working behind the scenes, expanding the company's reach into more lucrative and often questionable ventures. Defense contracts, private security firms, and even dabbling in politics became part of the Reeves portfolio. Victor justified these moves as necessary evils. "The more power we have," he'd explain to a sometimes dubious Alex, "the more good we can do." And for a while it seemed to work. Reeves Enterprises continued to grow, its influence stretching across industries and borders. Alex, eager to prove himself worthy of the Reeves name, threw himself into his work, often spending late nights at the office poring over reports and brainstorming new initiatives. It was during one of these late nights, just weeks before the discovery that would change everything, that Alex stumbled upon a discrepancy in the company's financial reports. A seemingly innocuous error in a subsidiary's accounting caught his eye. When he brought it to Victor's attention, the older man dismissed it as a simple clerical mistake. "Don't worry about it," son Victor said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. "I'll have the accounting team look into it." But the incident planted a seed of doubt in Alex's mind. For the first time, he began to look at the empire he was set to inherit with a more critical eye. He started noticing small inconsistencies, whispered conversations that would stop when he entered a room, and a growing unease among some of the long-time employees. As the days passed, Alex found himself torn between his loyalty to Victor, the man who had given him everything, and a growing suspicion that all was not as it seemed within Reeves Enterprises. The company's public image remained pristine. Charity galas, veteran support programs, and community development projects continued to garner positive press. Alex himself was featured in several magazines, hailed as the future of socially responsible business leadership. But behind the scenes, tensions were mounting. Victor became increasingly secretive, holding meetings behind closed doors with people Alex didn't recognize. The older man's temper, always volatile, became more unpredictable. But more than once, Alex overheard heated arguments coming from Victor's office, only for the door to open and Victor to emerge, all smiles, as if nothing had happened. As the date of a major business deal approached, one that Victor claimed would change the game for Reeves Enterprises, Alex found himself at a crossroads. He loved Victor, was grateful for everything the man had done for him. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong at the heart of the company he was destined to lead. It was this internal conflict that led Alex to Victor's study that fateful night. As he stood before the hidden safe, his hand trembling over the keypad, Alex knew he was about to cross a line. Whatever he discovered inside would forever change his relationship with Victor and potentially alter the course of his own life. With a deep breath, Alex punched in the code, steeling himself for whatever secrets lay within. As the safe door swung open, he couldn't help but wonder, was he about to uncover the truth behind Reeves Enterprises' success? Or was he betraying the only father he'd ever known? The answer, he realized as he began to read the documents inside, was both. The boardroom hummed with anticipation as Alex concluded his presentation. And with these projections, gentlemen, Reeves Enterprises is poised to not only acquire global tech, but to revolutionize the way we support our veterans. He paused, a practiced smile playing on his lips. Just as we've always supported those who've supported us, if you believe in our mission, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Sign the merger agreement on your tablets. A ripple of laughter swept through the room, breaking the tension. Victor, seated at the head of the table, nodded approvingly. "Well done, son," he said, his voice gruff with pride. "I couldn't have put it better myself." As the board members filed out, chattering excitedly about the impending deal, Alex felt a mix of elation and unease. The global tech acquisition was set to be the biggest in Reeves Enterprises' history, a move that would cement their position as the leading provider of veteran services in the country. Yet something about the numbers didn't quite add up. "Alex," Victor called, breaking into his thoughts. "A word in my office." Following his adoptive father down the plush corridor, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial. Victor's office, a testament to modern design and old-world power, always made Alex feel small. Today, that feeling was amplified. "You did good in there, son," Victor said, settling into his leather chair. "The board's eating out of your hand. Keep this up, and you'll be sitting in this chair before you know it." Alex smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thanks, Dad, but there's something I wanted to ask you about the global tech financials." Victor waved a hand dismissively. "Details, Alex. That's what we pay the accountants for. You need to focus on the big picture." "But..." "No buts," Victor interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "This deal is going to change everything. For the company, for the veterans we serve, for you." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "I need you 100% focused. Can you do that for me?" Alex hesitated, then nodded. "Of course, Dad, you can count on me." "That's my boy," Victor said, his face softening. "Now go celebrate. You've earned it." As Alex left the office, he couldn't shake the nagging doubt in his mind. He made his way to his own office, smaller but no less impressive than Victor's. Closing the door, he pulled up the global tech files on his computer. Hours ticked by as Alex pored over the numbers, cross-referencing data and following paper trails. The more he dug, the more his unease grew. There were discrepancies, small at first glance, but adding up to significant sums. Money flowing through shell companies, inflated contracts, and most disturbingly, a pattern of acquiring businesses owned by disabled veterans only to strip them of assets and leave the owners in financial ruin. "This can't be right," Alex muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. He clicked through another set of files, his heart sinking with each revelation. Dad wouldn't. He couldn't. But the evidence was mounting, impossible to ignore. Reeves Enterprises, The company Alex had been proud to be a part of, the legacy he was meant to carry forward, was built on a foundation of lies and exploitation. A knock on the door startled Alex from his thoughts. "Come in," he called, quickly minimizing the screams. Sarah, his assistant, poked her head in. "Mr. Reeves, your father asked me to remind you about the charity gala tonight. He says, and I quote, tell Alex to put on his best suit and his winning smile. We need all hands on deck for this one." Alex forced a smile. "Thanks, Sarah. Tell him I'll be there." As Sarah closed the door, Alex leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. The gala, a high-profile event to raise funds for veteran housing, now seemed like a cruel joke in light of what he'd discovered. He glanced at the photo on his desk, a younger Victor, still in uniform, arm around a beaming teenage Alex at his high school graduation. "What happened to you, Dad?" he whispered. The weight of his discovery pressed down on Alex like a physical force. He had always known that the business world could be cutthroat, that sometimes ethical lines got blurred in pursuit of success. But this was beyond anything he could have imagined. As he stood to prepare for the gala, Alex caught his reflection in the window. The young man staring back at him looked lost, uncertain. He straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and tried to summon the confidence he'd displayed in the boardroom earlier. Just like in the presentation, he told his reflection, his voice barely above a whisper. "Smile, nod, and pretend everything's fine. And don't forget to remind everyone to smash that like button. Donate generously." The attempt at humor fell flat, even to his own ears. As he left his office, Alex knew that tonight's gala would be more than just another charity event. It would be the beginning of a journey that would test his loyalty, his ethics, and everything he thought he knew about the man he called father. The charity gala was in full swing, a glittering affair of tuxedos, champagne, and carefully cultivated philanthropy. Alex moved through the crowd, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, all the while feeling like an imposter in his own skin. Every smile felt forced, every laugh hollow. Across the room, Victor held court, regaling a group of influential donors with tales of Reeves Enterprises' latest veteran support initiatives. His charisma was undeniable, his passion seemingly genuine. For a moment, Alex allowed himself to hope that perhaps he had misunderstood, that there was a reasonable explanation for what he'd discovered. "Alex," my boy Victor's booming voice cut through the chatter. "Come here. These fine people want to hear about your ideas for the new Veterans Rehabilitation Center." Mastering on his best smile, Alex made his way over. As he spoke about state-of-the-art facilities and innovative therapy programs, his mind raced. How many of these projects were genuine? How many were just fronts for the company's less savory activities? As the night wore on, the weight of his knowledge became unbearable. Excusing himself, Alex slipped out onto a balcony, gulping in the cool night air. The city sprawled before him, a tapestry of lights and shadows. Somewhere out there were the veterans and families who trusted Reeves Enterprises, who believed in the company's mission. The thought made his stomach churn. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Victor's voice startled Alex from his reverie. The older man joined him at the railing, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "When I first came to this city, I had nothing. Now look at us. All of this," he gestured at the skyline, "is part of our legacy. Your legacy, Alex." Alex gripped the railing tighter, his knuckles white. "Dad," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." Victor turned, his eyebrow raised. "Oh, what about?" Taking a deep breath, Alex steeled himself. "I've been looking into the global tech acquisition, and I've found some discrepancies." A flash of something, anger? Fear? Crossed Victor's face before it settled back into a mask of calm. Discrepancies. What kind of discrepancies? Financial irregularities, shell companies, and Alex hesitated, then pressed on, a pattern of exploiting veteran-owned businesses. Silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. When Victor spoke, his voice was dangerously low. "I see. And what do you plan to do with this information?" The question hung in the air, laden with unspoken implications. Alex met his father's gaze, searching for a hint of remorse, an offer of explanation. He found none. "That depends," Alex said carefully, "on what you have to say about it." Victor's laugh was harsh, devoid of humor. "What I have to say? All right, here's what I have to say. This world, this business, it's not the fairy tale you seem to think it is. Sometimes, to do good, you have to get your hands dirty." Dirty? Alex's voice rose, incredulous. "Dad, this goes beyond dirty. This is illegal. It's necessary," Victor snapped, his composure cracking. "Do you have any idea what it takes to build something like this? The compromises, the sacrifices, the—" Alex shook his head, disbelief turning to anger. "Sacrifices? You're talking about people's lives, Dad. Veterans. The very people we're supposed to be helping." Victor's eyes hardened. "I am helping them. More than you could possibly understand. For every business we've had to streamline, hundreds more veterans have benefited. It's a numbers game, son. Sometimes you have to cut off a limb to save the body." The casual cruelty of the statement staggered Alex. "Is that how you justify it? By telling yourself it's for the greater good?" "It's not justification. It's reality." Victor's voice softened, taking on an almost pleading tone. "Alex, everything I've done for us. For you. To secure your future, to make sure you had opportunities I never had." For a moment Alex saw not the titan of industry, but a tired old man, scarred by war and hardened by years of ruthless business dealings. It would be so easy to accept the explanation, to turn a blind eye and continue living in the world of privilege and power he'd grown accustomed to. But the faces of the veterans he'd met, the families who looked to Reeves Enterprises for support, flashed through his mind. He couldn't betray them. He couldn't betray himself. "No," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, I can't accept that. What you're doing, it's wrong, Dad. It has to stop." Victor's expression hardened once more. "And if I refuse, what then? Will you go to the authorities? Destroy everything we've built?" The question hit Alex like a physical blow. Would he? Could he bring down the empire that had given him everything, that still did good for so many despite its rotten core? I don't know," he admitted, "but I know I can't be a part of it anymore. Not like this." A tense silence fell between them. Inside, the gala continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding on the balcony. Finally, Victor spoke, his voice cold and businesslike. "You're upset. I understand. Take some time off. Clear your head. When you've calmed down, we'll discuss this rationally." Alex opened his mouth to protest, but Victor held up a hand, silencing him. "That's all I have to say on the matter. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have guests to attend to." With that, Victor turned and strode back into the ballroom, seamlessly rejoining the party as if nothing had happened. Alex remained on the balcony, his world tilting on its axis. As the night wore on, Alex went through the motions, shaking hands and making small talk while his mind raced. By the time the last guest had departed, he had made his decision. In the early hours of the morning, Alex found himself in his office, gathering documents and downloading files. He worked methodically, building a case that he hoped would expose the truth without completely destroying the good parts of Reeves Enterprises. As dawn broke over the city, Alex took one last look around the office that had been his second home. His gaze fell on the photo of him and Victor at his graduation. With a pang of regret, he placed it face down on the desk. Shouldering his bag, Alex walked out of Reeves Tower for what he believed would be the last time. He had no idea where this path would lead him, but he knew he couldn't turn back now. As he hailed a taxi, his phone buzzed with a message from Victor: "Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. We can work this out. Family first, remember? Alex stared at the message for a long moment before typing out a reply, "I'm sorry, Dad, but some things are more important than family." With a heavy heart, he switched off his phone and gave the driver an address. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, Alex didn't look back. The Reeves empire might be at risk, but for the first time in his life, Alex felt like he was on the right path. The early morning sun cast long shadows across the modest apartment Alex had rented under an assumed name. Stacks of documents and a laptop surrounded him, a far cry from the luxurious office he'd left behind. 3 days had passed since his confrontation with Victor, 3 days of sleepless nights and constant vigilance. Alex rubbed his tired eyes, scanning through another set of financial records. The more he dug, the worse it got. The exploitation of veteran-owned businesses was just the tip of the iceberg. There were defense contracts with inflated prices, money laundering through charitable foundations, even evidence of blackmail against politicians who had threatened to investigate Reeves' enterprises. A knock at the door made Alex jump. He approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. A wave of relief washed over him as he recognized the face. "Sarah," he breathed, opening the door to his former assistant. "Thank God you're here." Sarah slipped inside, her usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. "Alex, what the hell is going on? The office is in chaos. Your father is on a rampage, and there are rumors flying everywhere." Alex led her to the kitchen table, clearing a space among the papers. "It's worse than I thought, Sarah. Much worse. Reeves Enterprises. It's not what we thought it was." Over the next hour, Alex laid out everything he'd discovered. Sarah listened in stunned silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. "My God," she whispered when he finished. "Alex, this is huge. What are you going to do?" Alex ran a hand through his unkempt hair. "I don't know. I can't just sit on this information, but if I go public, it'll destroy the company. Thousands of people will lose their jobs, not to mention the veterans who rely on our legitimate programs." Sarah nodded, her brow furrowed in thought. "You need allies. People who can help you navigate this and make sure the truth comes out without causing unnecessary damage." "I've thought about that," Alex said, "but who can I trust? For all I know, half the board is in on it." A determined look crossed Sarah's face. "Start with me. I've worked at Reeves for 5 years, and I've seen things that didn't add up. I didn't want to believe it, but I'm with you, Alex. Whatever you decide to do." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. In the chaos of the past few days, he'd felt utterly alone. Sarah's support was like a lifeline. "Thank you," he managed. "I don't know what I'd do without you." As they bent their heads together, formulating a plan, neither noticed the dark sedan parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing the occupants watching the apartment. Victor Reeves paced his office like a caged tiger, phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean you can't find him?" he snarled. "He's a public figure, for Christ's sake, not a ghost." The voice on the other end mumbled an apology, which only served to fuel Victor's rage. "I don't want excuses. I want results. Find Alex, and find those files. Use whatever resources you need." He slammed the phone down, bracing himself against the desk. How had it come to this? His son, his heir, turned against him. Everything he'd built, everything he'd sacrificed for, teetering on the brink of collapse. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. What he barked. His secretary, a mousy woman who'd worked for him for 2 decades, poked her head in. "Mr. Reeves, the board is asking for an emergency meeting." There. Concerned about the recent developments. Victor straightened, smoothing his features into a mask of calm authority. "Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes, and get me Senator Hawkins on the phone." As the secretary scurried away, Victor moved to the window, staring out at the city he'd helped shape. He'd clawed his way up from nothing, fought in the trenches of both war and business. He'd be damned if he'd let it all crumble now. "Oh, Alex," he murmured, a mix of anger and regret coloring his voice. "What have you done?" The following week saw Alex embarking on a clandestine campaign to expose the truth about Reeves Enterprises. With Sarah's help, he reached out to trusted journalists, whistleblower protection organizations, and even a few sympathetic insiders at the company. It was slow, painstaking work. For every piece of evidence he managed to verify, there were a dozen dead ends. The Reeves empire was vast and complex, its secrets buried under layers of shell companies and legal maneuvering. But gradually a picture began to emerge. A damning picture of corporate greed, exploitation, and betrayal of the very people Reeves Enterprises claimed to serve. Through it all, Alex struggled with the weight of his decision. Every news report about Reeves Enterprises' charitable work, every photo of his father shaking hands with grateful veterans, felt like a knife twisting in his gut. Was he doing the right thing? Or was he, as Victor had accused, destroying something vital out of a naive sense of moral absolutism? Sarah became his rock, her unwavering support and sharp mind keeping him grounded when doubts threatened to overwhelm him. Together they worked tirelessly, building a case that they hoped would expose the truth while preserving the parts of Reeves Enterprises that genuinely helped people. It was Sarah who first noticed they were being followed. Little things at first: a car that seemed to show up too often, a man at a cafe who paid too much attention to their conversation. As the days went by, the surveillance became more obvious, almost brazen. "They're sending a message," Alex said grimly, after they'd given their latest tale the slip. "They want us to know they're watching." Sarah's face was pale, but her voice steady. "Does this change anything?" Alex shook his head. "No. If anything, it proves we're on the right track. We need to accelerate our timeline." That night, as they pored over documents in Alex's temporary apartment, a breaking news alert flashed across the TV screen. Alex's blood ran cold as he saw the headline: Reeves Enterprises announces major expansion of veteran support programs. The camera cut to Victor, standing at a podium, his face a picture of benevolent concern. "In these troubled times," he was saying, "it's more important than ever that we stand by those who have sacrificed so much for our country. That's why Reeves Enterprises is committing an additional $500 million to expand our housing, healthcare, and job training programs for veterans over the next 5 years." Alex watched in disbelief as his father went on to outline a series of initiatives that, on the surface, seemed incredibly generous. Job creation programs in economically depressed areas, cutting-edge PTSD treatment centers, and even a promise to work with Congress to reform the VA system. "He's trying to get ahead of the story," Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. "Making himself look like the savior of veterans so that when our evidence comes out, people will be less likely to believe it." Alex nodded, a mixture of admiration and disgust roiling in his stomach. It was a brilliant move, he had to admit. Victor was leveraging the company's reputation and his own charisma to create a narrative that would be hard to counter. "We need to move faster," Alex said, turning away from the TV. "No more waiting, no more gathering every last scrap of evidence. We go with what we have, and we go now." Sarah nodded, her face set with determination. "I'll contact our allies at the Justice Department. You reach out to that reporter at the Washington Post." As they sprang into action, Alex couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. This was at the point of no return. Whatever happened next, the Reeves empire would never be the same, and neither would his relationship with the man he'd called father for so long. But as he dialed the reporter's number, Alex steeled himself. The truth had to come out, no matter the personal cost. He only hoped that, in the end, it would be worth the price he was about to pay. The sun had barely risen when Alex's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He answered it groggily, still half asleep after another late night of piecing together evidence. Alex? It's James Corrigan from the Washington Post. The reporter's voice was tense, excited. We're ready to run with the story. It's going to hit the front page tomorrow morning. Alex sat up, suddenly wide awake. You're sure? Everything's verified. Triple checked. It's solid, Alex. This is going to blow the lid off Reeves Enterprises. As the call ended, Alex felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Months of work, of living in the shadows, were about to pay off. But at what cost? Sarah stirred beside him on the pull-out couch they'd been sharing in the small safe house. Was that Corrigan, she asked, her voice thick with sleep. Alex nodded. It's happening. Tomorrow morning. Sarah reached out, squeezing his hand. You've done the right thing, Alex. Remember that. As they began preparing for the storm that was about to break, Alex couldn't help but wonder if she was right. Across town, in a run-down VIA hospital, Mark Jennings stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains for the 1,000th time. The former Marine had been there for weeks, waiting for approval for a surgery that might let him walk again. A surgery that Reeves Enterprises had promised to fast-track as part of their Veterans Support Program. A commotion in the hallway drew his attention. Nurses were gathered around a TV, their voices a mix of shock and disbelief. ... Breaking news, the announcer was saying. Reeves Enterprises, long hailed as a champion of veterans' rights, is facing allegations of widespread fraud and exploitation. Mark listened in growing horror as the report detailed how the company had systematically taken advantage of disabled veterans, using their businesses as fronts for money laundering and tax evasion. No, he whispered, shaking his head in denial. It can't be true. But as the evidence mounted, as former employees came forward with their stories, Mark felt something inside him break. The one beacon of hope in his life, the organization he'd trusted to have his back, had been using him and countless others like him. With trembling hands, he reached for his phone and dialed a number he'd sworn he'd never call again. Hey, Rick, he said when his old squad mate answered. Remember that lawyer you told me about? The one handling the class action against the VA? Yeah, I think I'm ready to talk to him. In the following days, the Reeves empire began to crumble. Stock prices plummeted as investors jumped ship. Government contracts were suspended pending investigation. Veterans organizations that had once sung Victor's praises now called for boycotts and protests. Alex watched it all unfold from the safety of an undisclosed location provided by the Justice Department. He'd known it would be bad, but the reality was beyond anything he'd imagined. Alex, you need to see this, Sarah said, turning up the volume on the TV. Victor's face filled the screen, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a look of grim determination. My fellow Americans, he began, I come before you today not as the CEO of Reeves Enterprises, but as a father, a veteran, and a man who has dedicated his life to serving others. Alex leaned forward, his heart pounding. What was Victor up to? The allegations against my company are serious, and I do not take them lightly, Victor continued. While there have been mistakes made, I assure you that the core mission of Reeves Enterprises to support and uplift our nation's veterans has always been genuine. He paused, his eyes seeming to look directly into the camera. To prove our commitment, I am stepping down as CEO, effective immediately. I am also pledging my personal fortune to establish an independent trust for veteran support, overseen by a board of respected military and civilian leaders. Alex sat back, stunned. It was a masterful move, he had to admit. Victor was sacrificing himself to save the company, painting himself as a flawed but ultimately well-intentioned leader. He's trying to control the narrative, Sarah said, her voice tight with frustration. Make it look like he's taking responsibility without actually admitting to any wrongdoing. Alex nodded, a mixture of admiration and disappointment warring inside him. Even now, facing the collapse of everything he'd built, Victor was fighting, maneuvering, trying to salvage what he could. Will it work? Sarah asked. Alex shook his head slowly. I don't know, but it's not over yet. As the weeks passed, Alex found himself thrust into a role he'd never anticipated, that of a reluctant whistleblower celebrity. News shows clamored for interviews, activists hailed him as a hero, and veterans reached out to share their stories of how Reeves Enterprises had impacted their lives, for better or worse. It was overwhelming, exhausting, and more than once Alex found himself longing for the simplicity of his old life. But every time he considered stepping back, he'd receive a message or a call that reminded him why he'd started this journey in the first place. One such call came late one night as Alex was preparing for yet another congressional hearing. Mr. Reeves, the voice on the other end, was hesitant, young. My name's Tommy Alvarez. I don't know if you remember me, but you visited my dad's shop a few years back. Alvarez Auto Repair. Alex's mind flashed back to a small garage in Detroit, a proud veteran showing off the business he'd built with a loan from Reeves Enterprises. Of course, Tommy. How's your dad doing? There was a long pause. He's gone, sir. Took his own life last year when the bank foreclosed on the shop. We found out later that the loan wasn't what we thought it was. The interest rates, the terms. It was set up to fail from the start. Alex felt his knees go weak. He sank into a chair, his free hand clenched into a fist. Tommy, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's not your fault, Mr. Reeves, Tommy said quickly. That's actually why I'm calling. I wanted to thank you. For telling the truth, for standing up to your father. It won't bring my dad back, but it means something, to know that someone cared enough to do the right thing. After the call ended, Alex sat in silence for a long time, tears streaming down his face. Sarah found him there hours later, a new resolve hardening in his eyes. We're not done, he told her, his voice steady. There are still people out there who need help, who need the truth. We can't stop now. Sarah nodded, a small smile on her face. I was hoping you'd say that, because I think I found something big. As she laid out her discovery, a hidden set of accounts that suggested Victor's corruption went even deeper than they'd thought, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be hard, the personal cost high, but he knew now, without a doubt, that he was on the right path. The Reeves empire might be falling, but from its ashes something new and genuinely good could rise, and Alex was determined to see it through, no matter what. The day of the Senate hearing dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm that was about to break. Alex stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie with trembling hands. The face that looked back at him was older, more weathered than he remembered. The past months had taken their toll. Ready for this? Sarah asked, appearing in the doorway. Alex took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. In a way, this reminds me of all those charity galas and press conferences. Except this time, we're not asking people to like and subscribe to our corporate message. We're asking them to face an uncomfortable truth. Sarah smiled, a mix of pride and concern in her eyes. You've got this, Alex. Just remember, you're speaking for all those who can't speak for themselves. As they made their way to the Capitol, Alex couldn't help but feel the weight of expectation on his shoulders. Reporters swarmed around them, shouting questions. Protesters lined the streets, some supporting him, others calling him a traitor to his father and the company. Inside the hearing room, Alex took his seat at the witness table, acutely aware of the cameras trained on him, broadcasting this moment to millions. Senators filed in, their faces a mix of stern determination and barely concealed excitement at the drama about to unfold. The committee chairman gavelled the session to order. Mr. Reeves, you are here today to testify about alleged misconduct at Reeves Enterprises. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone watching at home that this is not a trial, but a fact-finding mission. We're not here to pass judgment, but to uncover the truth. Now, Mr. Reeves. please raise your right hand and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Alex complied, his voice steady as he swore the oath. As he began his testimony, laying out the evidence of fraud, exploitation, and corruption, he couldn't help but feel a sense of surreality. It was as if he was narrating someone else's story, not exposing the dark underbelly of his own family's legacy. Reeves Enterprises built its reputation on supporting veterans, Alex said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. But the reality is far darker. We systematically targeted vulnerable veterans, using their businesses as fronts for money laundering and tax evasion. We inflated contracts, skimmed from charitable donations, and blackmailed anyone who threatened to expose us. A murmur ran through the room. Alex pressed on, his voice growing stronger. "I know some of you watching might find this hard to believe. You've seen the commercials, the grand gestures, the seemingly heartfelt pledges to support our troops, but I'm here to tell you that it was all a carefully constructed facade. A facade that I was part of, that I believed in, until I couldn't ignore the truth any longer." As Alex delved into specific cases, providing names, dates, and figures, the senators leaned forward, their expressions growing more grave. He spoke of veterans like Tommy Alvarez's father, driven to despair by predatory loans. He detailed how the company had manipulated VA contracts, profiting from substandard care in veterans' hospitals. "I want to speak directly to those veterans and their families who are watching," Alex said, looking straight into the camera. "I know that nothing I say here today can undo the harm that's being done. But I promise you this, the truth will come out, and justice will be served. Your stories, your sacrifices, they matter, and they will not be forgotten or swept under the rug." As the questioning began, Alex found himself facing a barrage from all sides. Some senators pressed for more details, while others, clearly aligned with Reeves Enterprises' interests, tried to discredit his testimony. "Mr. Reeves," one senator began, his tone skeptical, "you expect us to believe that you, as the heir apparent to Reeves Enterprises, were completely unaware of these activities until recently." Alex leaned into the microphone. "Senator, I understand your skepticism. If I were in your position, watching this unfold, I might have the same doubts. But the truth is, I was raised to see only the good in what we did. I was shown the success stories, the grateful veterans, the ribbon-cutting ceremonies. It wasn't until I started digging deeper, prompted by some financial discrepancies, that I began to uncover the full extent of the deception." Well, another senator jumped in, "But surely, Mr. Reeves, you must have had some inkling. Are we to believe you were completely naive to the realities of corporate America?" Alex paused, considering his words carefully. "Senator, I won't pretend I was entirely innocent. I knew that in business sometimes ethical lines get blurred. But there's a world of difference between aggressive business tactics and the systematic exploitation of the very people we claim to serve. When I discovered the truth, I had a choice to make. I could have stayed silent, enjoyed my privileged life, and let the deception continue. Instead, I chose to speak out, knowing it would cost me everything." As the hearing stretched into its fourth hour, Alex began to feel the strain. His throat was dry, his mind racing to keep up with the rapid-fire questions. But every time he felt his resolve wavering, he thought of Tommy Alvarez, of Mark Jennings, of all the veterans and families who had trusted Reeves Enterprises. Suddenly, a commotion at the back of the room drew everyone's attention. Alex turned, his heart skipping a beat as he saw a familiar figure making his way down the aisle. Victor Reeves, looking older and more haggard than Alex had ever seen him, approached the witness table. The room fell silent, the tension palpable. "Dad," Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. Victor didn't look at his son. Instead, he addressed the committee chairman. "I request the opportunity to testify," he said, his voice gruff but clear. The chairman, visibly startled, conferred quickly with his colleagues before nodding. "Very well, Mr. Reeves. Please take a seat." As Victor was sworn in, Alex couldn't tear his eyes away from his father. What was he doing here? Was he going to try to discredit Alex's testimony? Victor cleared his throat and began to speak. "Senators, distinguished members of the committee, I come before you today not to defend myself or my company, but to corroborate my son's testimony." A collective gasp ran through the room. Alex felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. "Everything Alex has told you is true," Victor continued, his voice heavy with regret. "In fact, the situation is even worse than he knows. I am here to provide a full accounting of my actions and to face whatever consequences may come." For the next hour, Victor laid bare the inner workings of Reeves Enterprises. He detailed backroom deals with corrupt politicians, offshore accounts hiding millions in stolen funds, and a vast network of shell companies designed to obscure the company's true activities. "I told myself it was all for a greater good," Victor said, his voice cracking, "that the end justified the means. I convinced myself that by helping some veterans I could excuse exploiting others. I was wrong. Terribly, unforgivably wrong." As Victor spoke, Alex watched the faces of the senators, the journalists, the spectators in the gallery. Shock gave way to anger, then to a sort of grim resolution. He knew that with every word his father spoke, the Reeves empire was crumbling to dust. Finally, Victor turned to face Alex for the first time. "Son," he said, his eyes brimming with unshed tears, "I owe you an apology. You showed more courage and integrity than I ever did. I hope that someday you can forgive me." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but no words came. The chairman, visibly shaken by Victor's testimony, called for a recess. As the room erupted into chaos, reporters shouting questions and senators huddling in urgent conference, Alex remained rooted to his seat, his mind reeling. Sarah appeared at his side, her face pale. "Alex," she said urgently, "we need to go. Now." As they made their way out of the hearing room, surrounded by a phalanx of security guards, Alex caught glimpses of the scene unfolding around him. Protesters outside the Capitol were growing more vocal, their chants audible even through the thick walls. News tickers on the screens lining the hallways flashed urgent headlines: "Reeves Enterprises CEO confesses to fraud, Veteran Support Organization revealed as criminal enterprise." In a secure room deep within the Capitol, Alex finally allowed himself to break down. Sarah held him as he sobbed, years of pent-up emotion pouring out. "It's over," he whispered. "It's finally over." But even as he said the words, Alex knew it wasn't true. This wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The real work of making amends, of rebuilding trust, of creating something genuinely good from the ashes of the Reeves empire was just starting. As they prepared to face the media frenzy waiting outside, Alex turned to Sarah. "You know," he said, a hint of his old humor creeping into his voice, "I always thought I'd be addressing the nation under different circumstances. Maybe announcing a new veteran support initiative or accepting some humanitarian award. Instead, here we are, about to face a mob of angry reporters and disappointed veterans." Sarah squeezed his hand. "You're doing the right thing, Alex. That's what matters." Alex nodded, squaring his shoulders. "You're right. And to everyone who's been following this story, who's been affected by it, I want you to know this: we're not going away. This isn't the end of our journey, it's just the beginning. We're going to make this right, no matter how long it takes." As they stepped out to face the sea of cameras and microphones, Alex felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. The truth was out. The fight for justice was just beginning, and for the first time in a long time, he felt truly, unequivocally on the right side. In the days that followed, the fallout from the Senate hearing was seismic. Reeves Enterprises' stock plummeted, wiping out billions in market value overnight. Federal agents raided company offices across the country, carting away boxes of documents and hard drives. Former executives scrambled to make deals with prosecutors, each revelation more damning than the last. But amid the chaos and recrimination, something unexpected began to emerge. Veterans groups, initially outraged by the betrayal, started to rally around Alex. They saw in him not just a whistleblower, but a potential ally in their long fight for better treatment and support. "You know, folks, hey," Alex said in one particularly heated town hall meeting, "I understand your anger. If I were in your shoes watching this all unfold on my screen, I'd be furious too. But I'm asking you to channel that anger into something productive. We have a chance here to rebuild, to create a support system that actually puts veterans first. Are you with me?" The response was a roar of approval that took Alex by surprise. It seemed that even in the darkest moments there was a hunger for hope, for a chance at redemption. As the legal proceedings against Reeves Enterprises ground on, Alex found himself shuttling between courtrooms, congressional offices, and veterans centers. He testified in trials, advised on new legislation, and worked tirelessly to ensure that the company's legitimate charitable works could continue under new, transparent management. It was exhausting, often thankless work. But every time Alex felt overwhelmed, he'd remember the words of Mark Jennings, the veteran he'd met in that run-down VA hospital. "You gave us back our voice, son. Don't you dare give up now." And so Alex pressed on. The Reeves empire had fallen, but from its ashes, something new and potentially transformative was beginning to take shape. It wasn't the legacy his father had envisioned for him, but as Alex stood before a group of cheering veterans, their faces filled with hope and determination, he knew it was a legacy he could be proud of. "This is just the beginning," he told them, his voice carrying across the crowd. "We've got a long road ahead of us. But if you're willing to stick with me, to keep fighting for what's right, I promise you this: we will build something better, something real, something that truly honors the sacrifices you've made for this country." As the applause washed over him, Alex allowed himself a small smile. The Reeves name might be tarnished, but the real work was just beginning. The courtroom was hushed as Victor Reeves rose to hear his sentence. Gone was the commanding presence that had once dominated boardrooms and charity galas. In its place stood a man diminished, his shoulders hunched under the weight of his crimes. Alex watched from the gallery, his emotions a turbulent mix of anger, pity, and a grief he couldn't quite name. As the judge began to speak, detailing the extent of Victor's crimes and their impact on countless veterans and their families, Alex found his mind wandering to the day, just a few weeks earlier, when everything had begun to unravel. It had started with a phone call. Alex had been in the middle of a meeting with a veterans advocacy group when his phone buzzed insistently. Excusing himself, he stepped out into the hallway. Mr. Reeves, the voice on the other end, was clinical, detached. "This is Dr. Patel from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm calling about your father." Alex's grip on the phone tightened. "What's happened?" "Your father was brought in early this morning after collapsing in his home. He's stable now, but Mr. Reeves, I think you should come down here. There are some things we need to discuss." The next few hours passed in a blur. Alex found himself sitting in a sterile hospital room, listening as Dr. Patel explained Victor's condition. Stress-induced cardiomyopathy, exacerbated by years of untreated high blood pressure and the recent strain of the legal proceedings. In layman's terms, Mr. Reeves, Dr. Patel said gently, "Your father's heart is failing. The damage is extensive." Alex stared at the still figure in the hospital bed, tubes and wires snaking out from under the thin blanket. How could this be the same man who had loomed so large in his life, who had built an empire and brought it crashing down? "How long?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Patel's hesitation spoke volumes. "It's hard to say with certainty, but weeks, perhaps months at most. I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves." As if on cue, Victor's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, confusion clouded his features. Then, recognizing Alex, a wan smile touched his lips. "Alex," he rasped, his voice weak. "You came." Alex moved closer to the bed, unsure of what to say. How do you address the man who raised you, who you admired and emulated, only to discover he was not the hero you thought he was? "Of course I came," Alex finally managed. You're my father." Victor's eyes, once sharp and commanding, now seemed to struggle to focus. "I'm sorry, son, for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know. I'm proud of you, for standing up to me, for doing what's right." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to rage, to demand answers, to understand how the man who had taught him about integrity could have fallen so far. But looking at Victor now, frail and fading, all he felt was a profound sadness. "Dad," he began, but Victor shook his head weakly. "No, Alex, I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I've done, it can't be undone. But maybe you can make something good out of this mess. You always were better than me." Before Alex could respond, Victor's eyes slid shut, his breathing becoming labored. Dr. Patel stepped in, ushering Alex out of the room as nurses rushed in. In the days that followed, Alex found himself torn between his duties to the ongoing investigation and a growing need to be at his father's bedside. The media, ever hungry for drama, painted Victor's illness as everything from a ploy for sympathy to divine retribution. Sarah, ever his rock, managed the press and kept the advocacy work moving forward, allowing Alex the space to grapple with his conflicting emotions. "You don't owe him anything," she said one evening, as they sat in the hospital cafeteria, untouched coffee growing cold between them. "No one would blame you if you walked away." Alex stared into his cup, seeing his distorted reflection in the dark liquid. "I know, but I can't. For better or worse, he's my father, and I need to understand." It was during these hospital vigils that Alex began to see a side of Victor he'd never known. In his more lucid moments, Victor spoke of his childhood, of the poverty and hardship that had shaped him. He talked about the war, about watching friends die and feeling helpless to save them. "I came back broken," Victor confessed one night, his voice barely audible over the beep of machines. "I thought if I could just get enough money, enough power, I could make sure no veteran ever felt as lost as I did. But somewhere along the way I lost sight of why I started. The means became the end." Alex listened, not offering absolution, but beginning to understand the complex tapestry of motivations and mistakes that had led them to this point. As Victor's condition deteriorated, the legal proceedings against Reeves Enterprises intensified. Each day brought new revelations, new indictments. The empire Alex had once been proud to inherit was crumbling to dust. It was Sarah who broke the news about the mass layoffs. Thousands of employees, many of them veterans themselves, were losing their jobs as the company's subsidiaries were shut down or sold off. "We're trying to save what we can," she told Alex, her voice strained with fatigue. "But it's bad, Alex. People are angry, scared. They're looking for someone to blame." The weight of it all pressed down on Alex like a physical force. He'd known there would be collateral damage, but the reality of it, the human cost of his father's crimes, and his own decision to expose them, was almost unbearable. One afternoon, as Alex sat by Victor's bedside, a commotion in the hallway drew his attention. Rising, he opened the door to find a man in a wheelchair arguing with hospital security. "I have a right to see him," the man was shouting. "After what he did to us, I have a right." Alex recognized him immediately. Mark Jennings, the veteran he'd met months ago, whose story had been one of many that spurred Alex to action. Stepping into the hallway, Alex addressed the security guards. "It's okay, let him through." Mark's eyes, burning with a mix of anger and desperation, locked onto Alex. "You," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you promised us justice. But look at what's happened. My benefits are frozen. The support programs are shutting down. How is this justice?" Alex felt the weight of Mark's words like a physical blow. He knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with the wheelchair-bound veteran. "Mark, I'm sorry, I never wanted. I thought by exposing the truth we could fix things, make them right, but it's more complicated than I realized." Mark's laugh was bitter. "Complicated? My life was complicated before. Now it's impossible. Your father used us, and now you've thrown us away too." Before Alex could respond, a code blue alarm blared from Victor's room. Medical staff rushed past, pushing Alex and Mark aside in their haste. For what felt like hours, Alex stood in the hallway, watching as doctors fought to stabilize his father. Mark remained nearby, his anger seemingly tempered by the gravity of the moment. Finally, Dr. Patel emerged, his face grave. "Mr. Reeves, I'm sorry. Your father's heart. There's nothing more we can do. It's only a matter of time now." As the words sank in, Alex felt a strange sense of numbness wash over him. He turned to Mark, who was watching him with an unreadable expression. "I know it doesn't change anything," Alex said, his voice hoarse. "But I promise you, I'm not giving up. We'll find a way to make this right. Somehow." Mark held his gaze for a long moment before nodding slowly. "See that you do," he said quietly, "for all our sakes." As Mark wheeled away, Alex turned back to his father's room. The monitors beeped softly, marking out the final moments of Victor Reeves' life, and with each beep, Alex felt the weight of responsibility, of legacy, and of the long road ahead settling firmly on his shoulders. The empire had fallen, but the true cost in lives disrupted, trust broken, and futures uncertain was only now becoming clear. As he took his father's hand, feeling the weak pulse beneath his fingers, Alex made a silent vow. He would find a way to make this right, no matter how long it took, no matter the personal cost. It was, he realized, the only way to truly honor the man his father had meant to be, and the man Alex himself needed to become. The day after Victor's funeral dawned gray and somber, matching Alex's mood as he made his way to the Reeves Enterprises headquarters for what he expected to be the last time. The once bustling lobby was eerily quiet, the skeleton crew of remaining employees moving about like ghosts in a mausoleum of corporate dreams. Alex's footsteps echoed in the cavernous space as he crossed to the elevator banks. As he waited for the car to arrive, a headline on a discarded newspaper caught his eye. "Reeves' empire crumbles, thousands left jobless in wake of scandal." The weight of guilt, ever present these days, settled more heavily on his shoulders. The elevator dinged, and Alex stepped in, pressing the button for the top floor. As the doors began to close, a hand shot out, stopping them. A woman Alex vaguely recognized as one of the company's longtime receptionists slipped in beside him. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice tight with barely contained emotion. I just wanted to say." Alex braced himself for the anger, the recrimination he'd faced so often in recent weeks. But what came next caught him entirely off guard. "Thank you," the woman said, her eyes brimming with tears. "My son. He was one of the veterans your father helped. Not through the company, but personally. He paid for Tommy's rehab, got him back on his feet when no one else would give him a chance. I know there's been a lot of bad stuff coming out. But your father wasn't all bad. I thought you should know that." Before Alex could respond, the elevator reached her floor, and she hurried out, leaving him stunned and confused. It wasn't the first time someone had approached him with a story about Victor's personal generosity, but this felt different, more urgent somehow. Reaching the executive floor, Alex made his way to Victor's office, his office now, he supposed, though not for much longer. As he entered, his eye was drawn to the large portrait of Victor that dominated one wall. It had always made Alex uncomfortable, the way it seemed to watch over the room with an air of stern judgment. Settling behind the massive desk, Alex began the task he'd come here to do, sorting through the last of his father's personal effects. Most of the company documents had already been seized by investigators, but there were still drawers full of mementos, photos, and personal correspondence. Hours passed as Alex sifted through the detritus of his father's life. There were photos he'd never seen before: Victor as a young soldier, grinning with his army buddies, Victor at Alex's first Little League game, looking prouder than Alex had ever remembered seeing him. It was like putting together a puzzle of a man Alex had thought he knew, only to realize he'd been missing crucial pieces. As the afternoon wore on, Alex's hand brushed against something hidden at the back of the bottom drawer. Frowning, he reached in and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. It looked old, well-worn, the pages yellow with age. With a sense of trepidation, Alex opened it. The first page bore a date from over 30 years ago, just after Victor had returned from the war. As Alex began to read, he felt as if he was seeing his father for the first time. The journal detailed Victor's struggles with PTSD, his feelings of worthlessness and despair in those early days. But it also chronicled the birth of his dream to build something that would truly help his fellow veterans, to ensure that no one who had served their country would ever feel as lost and alone as he had. As Alex turned the pages, a pattern began to emerge. Alongside entries about business deals and company growth were notes about individual veterans Victor had helped. Names, dates, amounts of money given, all recorded meticulously, but kept separate from the company's official records. With growing amazement, Alex realized he was looking at evidence of a vast, secret philanthropic network Victor had built over the years. Millions of dollars funneled quietly to veterans in need, with no fanfare or public recognition. One entry in particular caught Alex's eye. It was dated just a few months before Alex had discovered the company's fraudulent activities. The handwriting was shaky, less assured than the earlier entries. Help James K., today, younger than most, lost both legs in Afghanistan. Reminds me of myself at that age. Set him up with a small business loan, off the books. Hope it's enough. It's never enough. The company's in too deep now, can't pull out without everything collapsing. But maybe. If I can help enough of them personally, it'll balance the scales somehow. God forgive me. Alex sat back, his mind reeling. The man described in these pages was so at odds with the ruthless businessman he'd exposed, and yet, it made a twisted kind of sense. Victor, tormented by guilt, trying to atone for his corporate sins through personal acts of charity. As Alex continued to read, a noise from the outer office caught his attention. Frowning, he rose from the desk. It was late, the floor should have been empty by now. "Hello," he called out. "Is someone there?" No answer came, but Alex could have sworn he heard the soft scuff of a shoe on carpet. Suddenly alert, he moved cautiously towards the door. Just as he reached for the handle, the door burst open, knocking Alex backwards. Two men in dark suits rushed in, their faces set in grim determination. "Alexander Reeves," one of them growled. "We need to have a chat." Alex scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding. "Who are you? What do you want?" The larger of the two men stepped forward, menace radiating from every pore. "Let's just say we represent some people who aren't too happy with what you've done. People who stood to lose a lot when you decided to play hero." Realization dawned on Alex. These weren't government agents or angry employees. These were something far more dangerous enforcers for whoever had been benefiting from Reeves Enterprises' shadier dealings. "Look," Alex said, trying to keep his voice steady, "whatever you think you're here for, it's not worth it. Everything's out in the open now. There's nothing left to hide." The smaller man, silent until now, let out a mirthless chuckle. "Oh, we're not here to hide anything, Mr. Reeves. We're here to send a message, to you and to anyone else who might think about crossing our employers." As they advanced, Alex's mind raced. The desk was too far to reach for the panic button. His phone was in his jacket, draped over a chair on the other side of the room. He was cornered, with no way out. Just as the men were about to reach him, a new voice rang out from the doorway. I wouldn't do that if I were you, gentlemen." All heads turned to see Sarah standing there, a gun steady in her hands, pointed directly at the intruders. Sarah Alex gasped, equal parts relieved and confused. "Step away from him," Sarah commanded, her voice hard as steel. "Now." The men exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. After a tense moment, they slowly raised their hands. "This isn't over," the larger one snarled as they backed towards the door. "Oh, I think it is," came another voice. Agent Rodriguez of the FBI stepped into view, flanked by several armed officers. "Gentlemen, you're under arrest." As the would-be attackers were handcuffed and led away, Alex sagged against the desk, the adrenaline leaving him in a rush. "Sarah," he breathed, "how did you?" Sarah lowered the gun, her hands shaking slightly now that the danger had passed. "I've been worried about something like this happening. After everything that's come out, I knew there might be people looking for revenge. I've been keeping an eye on you." Agent Rodriguez approached, his face grave. "Mr. Reeves, we've been monitoring chatter about potential threats against you. When MS Chen here alerted us to suspicious activity around the building we moved in, you're lucky she was here." Alex nodded, still trying to process what had just happened. "Thank you, both of you. I don't know what to say." As the FBI agents swept the office, Alex filled them in on what he'd discovered in Victor's journal. Agent Rodriguez listened intently, his expression thoughtful. "This could change things, Mr. Reeves," he said finally. "It doesn't excuse the company's actions, but it does paint a more complex picture. We'll need to review all of this, of course." After the agents had left, taking the journal as evidence, Alex and Sarah were left alone in the vast office. The portrait of Victor seemed to loom larger than ever in the fading evening light. "I can't believe I never knew," Alex said softly, more to himself than to Sarah. "All those years, and I never really knew him at all." Sarah placed a comforting hand on his arm. "People are complicated, Alex. Your father. He did terrible things, yes, but it seems he tried to do good, too, in his own way. The question is, what are you going to do with this information?" Alex turned to her, a new determination settling over him. "We need to find them, Sarah. All the people my father helped personally, and all the ones the company hurt. We need to understand the full picture." Sarah nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "I had a feeling you'd say that. I've already started compiling a list. It's going to be a big job, Alex. Are you sure you're up for it?" Alex looked around the office, at the trappings of power that had once seemed so important. None of it mattered now. What mattered was making things right, as much as it was possible to do so. "I'm sure," he said firmly, "it's time to rebuild. Not the company, not the Reeves name, but something new. Something that actually lives up to all the promises we made." As they left the office, turning off the lights for what Alex knew would be the last time, he felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. The Reeves empire as he had known it was gone. But from its ashes something new could rise. Something, perhaps, that might begin to balance the scales his father had so desperately tried to right. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Alex and Sarah, working with a small team of trusted associates, began the painstaking process of tracking down every individual mentioned in Victor's journal. It was slow, often frustrating work. Many of the veterans were suspicious, reluctant to come forward after everything that had happened with Reeves Enterprises. But gradually a picture began to emerge. For every story of corporate malfeasance and exploitation, there was a counterbalancing tale of personal generosity and life-changing support. Victor Reeves, it seemed, had been a man divided against himself, trying to atone for his public sins through private acts of charity. As Alex listened to story after story, he felt his understanding of his father shift and deepen. The man he had idolized as a child, then condemned as an adult, was revealing himself to be far more complex than Alex had ever imagined. One evening, as Alex and Sarah were poring over their findings, a notification popped up on Alex's laptop. It was an email from Agent Rodriguez, marked urgent. With a sense of trepidation, Alex opened it. As he read, his eyes widened. "Sarah," he said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion, "you need to see this." The email contained a bombshell revelation. The FBI, following leads from Victor's journal, had uncovered a massive off-the-books charitable foundation. Set up by Victor years ago, it had been operating in secret, channeling millions of dollars to veterans' causes. He was planning to reveal it. Alex read aloud from the email, his voice filled with wonder. According to these documents, Dad was going to go public with the foundation, use it to try and make amends for what the company had done. He just ran out of time. Sarah leaned in, reading over his shoulder. "Alex, do you know what this means? With this foundation, we might be able to actually follow through on all those promises Reeves Enterprises made. We could really help people." Alex sat back, his mind racing with possibilities. The revelation of the secret foundation didn't erase the harm Reeves Enterprises had done, but it did offer a chance at redemption, a way to begin making things right. As the full implications sank in, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose wash over him. The road ahead would be long and difficult. There were still legal battles to fight, trust to rebuild, and a legacy to redefine. But for the first time in months, Alex felt genuinely hopeful. "You're right," he said to Sarah, a determined smile spreading across his face. "This is our chance to do things right. To build something that truly honors the sacrifices of our veterans without any of the shortcuts or compromises." As they bent their heads together, beginning to plan their next steps, Alex couldn't help but glance at the photo of his father that sat on his desk. The man in the picture smiled back, his eyes holding a hint of the complexity Alex was only now beginning to understand. "I'll make it right, Dad," Alex whispered. "I promise." The conference room buzzed with tension as Alex Reeves stood at the head of the table, facing the board of the newly formed Reeves Foundation for Veteran Support. It had been a year since the revelation of Victor's secret philanthropic efforts, a year of intense work, legal battles, and painstaking efforts to rebuild trust. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alex began, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach, "today marks a new chapter in our journey. We've spent the past year untangling the web of Reeves Enterprises' past actions, making amends where we could, and laying the groundwork for a truly transparent and effective veterans support organization." He paused, looking around the room. The faces staring back at him were a mix of former Reeves Enterprises employees who had chosen to stay and fight for redemption, veteran advocates who had been persuaded to give the new foundation a chance, and financial experts tasked with ensuring every penny was accounted for. "I know many of you are still skeptical," Alex continued. "You have every right to be. The Reeves name has been tarnished, perhaps beyond repair, but I'm not asking you to trust in a name. I'm asking you to trust in our actions, in the structures we've put in place to ensure accountability, and in our shared commitment to doing right by those who have served our country." As Alex launched into a detailed presentation of the Foundation's first-year achievements and future plans, he couldn't help but reflect on the long, difficult road that had brought them to this point. The months following the discovery of Victor's secret foundation had been a whirlwind of activity. Alex and Sarah had worked tirelessly, coordinating with the FBI, legal teams, and veteran advocacy groups to unravel the complex web of Reeves Enterprises' legitimate and illegitimate activities. It hadn't been easy. For every step forward, there seemed to be 2 steps back. Former employees, feeling betrayed, had come forward with new allegations. Veteran groups, burned once, were reluctant to engage again. The media circus never seemed to die down, with Alex's every move scrutinized and analyzed. But slowly, painstakingly, they had begun to make progress. The Foundation's finances were open to public scrutiny, with independent auditors brought in to ensure complete transparency. A board of directors was established, comprised primarily of veterans and advocacy leaders, with Alex taking a background role to avoid any appearance of impropriety. One of the hardest moments had come 6 months into the process, when Alex had to face a town hall meeting of former Reeves Enterprises employees. The anger and hurt in the room had been palpable, with many blaming Alex personally for the loss of their livelihoods. "I understand your anger," Alex had told them, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't ask for your forgiveness. What I ask is for a chance to make things right. Not just for the veterans we claim to serve, but for all of you who believed in the company's mission. We're building something new here, something honest, and we need good people to make it work." To Alex's surprise, many had stepped forward, willing to give the new foundation a chance. Their knowledge and experience proved invaluable in navigating the complex world of veteran support services. As Alex concluded his presentation to the board, he could see the shift in the room. The skepticism hadn't disappeared entirely, but there was a new energy, a cautious optimism that hadn't been there before. Any questions Alex asked, bracing himself for the usual barrage of inquiries and challenges. To his surprise, it was Mark Jennings who spoke first. The veteran, once one of Alex's harshest critics, had become an invaluable advisor in the Foundation's efforts to address the real needs of veterans. "Just one," Mark said, leaning forward in his wheelchair. "When do we expand? Because from what I'm seeing, we're ready to take this nationwide." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room. Alex felt a weight he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying lift from his shoulders. They weren't there yet, not by a long shot, but for the first time, he felt like they were truly on the right path. As the meeting adjourned, Alex found himself drawn to the window, looking out over the city. So much had changed in the past year. The Reeves Tower, once the crown jewel of his father's empire, had been sold off to pay restitution to those harmed by the company's actions. The Foundation operated out of a modest office building, a physical reminder of their commitment to putting resources where they were most needed. "Penny, for your thoughts," Sarah's voice broke into his reverie. She joined him at the window, a small smile playing on her lips. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Alex replied, "and how far we still have to go." Sarah nodded, her expression turning serious. "Have you given any more thought to the offer?" Alex sighed. The offer she referred to had come as a surprise, an invitation to testify before Congress on veteran support reform. It was an opportunity to shape policy on a national level, to potentially help far more veterans than the Foundation could reach alone. But it also meant stepping back into the public eye, reopening old wounds, and potentially undermining the Foundation's efforts to separate itself from the Reeves name. "I don't know," Alex admitted. "Part of me thinks I should stay in the background, let the work speak for itself, but if there's a chance to create real systemic change—" "You'll make the right decisions," Sarah said confidently. "You always do, eventually." Alex chuckled at that, grateful as always for her unwavering support. As they turned to leave the conference room, Alex's eye was caught by a framed photo on the wall. It showed a group of veterans at the opening of the Foundation's first rehabilitation center. The joy and hope on their faces never failed to remind Alex of why they were doing this. Among the smiling faces was Tommy Alvarez, the young man whose father's suicide had been one of the catalysts for Alex's decision to expose Reeves Enterprises' wrongdoings. Tommy had been one of the first to benefit from the Foundation's programs, and now worked as a peer counselor, helping other veterans navigate the challenges of civilian life. Seeing Tommy's transformation from an angry, grieving son to a confident, purpose-driven young man filled Alex with a profound sense of both sadness and hope. It was a vivid reminder of the real, human impact of both his father's actions and his own decisions. As Alex and Sarah made their way out of the building, they were greeted by a small group of protesters. This was not an unusual sight. There were still many who felt the Foundation was just a ploy for redemption, a way for the Reeves name to salvage some positive PR. But today something was different. Alongside the familiar faces of the regular protesters, there was a new group. Veterans, some in wheelchairs, others standing tall in uniforms adorned with medals, held signs proclaiming support for the Foundation's work. One of the veterans, an older man with a prosthetic leg, stepped forward as Alex approached. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind, "I was helped by your father years ago. Kept it quiet all this time, because, well, I was ashamed to admit I needed the help. But what you're doing now, bringing it all into the light, it's good, it's right. I just wanted you to know that." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. "Thank you," he managed to say. That means more than you know." As they drove away, Alex found himself reflecting on the complex legacy he had inherited. The Reeves name would always be tainted by the scandals of the past, but perhaps it could also become synonymous with redemption, with the hard work of making amends and creating real, positive change. "You know," he said to Sarah as they pulled up to a stoplight, "I think I will testify before Congress. Not as Alexander Reeves, heir to an empire, but as Alex, just another American trying to do right by our veterans." Sarah smiled, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "I think that's a great idea. And Alex, your father would be proud of you." Alex nodded, a mix of emotions washing over him. The road ahead was still long and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, he felt truly at peace with his path. The Reeves Empire had fallen, but from its ashes something far more valuable was rising, a chance to truly make a difference, to honor the sacrifices of veterans not with empty promises, but with concrete action and unwavering commitment. As they drove on towards an uncertain but hopeful future, Alex allowed himself a small smile. The journey wasn't over in many ways, it was just beginning, but he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, secure in the knowledge that he was, at last, doing the right thing. Alex stood before the gathered veterans, his voice thick with emotion. "I stand before you not as the heir to an empire, but as a man humbled by the weight of truth and the power of redemption. My father once told me everything we do for those who served, but somewhere along the way, he lost sight of that mission, as did I. To those we've hurt, to the families we've failed, I can never apologize enough. Your pain, your loss, it's a debt I can never fully repay. But I promise you this every day, with every breath, I will work to make it right. I've seen the darkness that comes from betraying our ideals, and I've felt the light that shines when we choose to do what's right, no matter the cost. To the veterans struggling alone, feeling forgotten, you are not alone. To the family mourning a loved one lost not on the battlefield, but to the battles they fought after coming home, your loss is not in vain. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. Every life touched, every veteran helped, every wrong made right, it's a step towards healing, not just for you, but for all of us. I think of Tommy Alvarez, whose father we failed, but who now helps other veterans find their path. I think of Mark Jennings, who had every reason to turn his back on us, but chose to help us rebuild. Your strength, your resilience, it humbles me and inspires me. My father, in his final days, told me he was proud of me for standing up to him, for doing what's right. But the truth is, I'm proud of all of you, for your service, for your sacrifice, and for giving us a chance to make amends. This foundation isn't about salvaging a name or an empire. It's about honoring a promise to stand by those who stood for us, to lift up those who have fallen, to remember those we've lost. So I ask you now, not for forgiveness, but for the opportunity to earn your trust. Let us walk this path of healing together. Let us build something that truly honors your sacrifice, that lives up to the ideals we all hold dear. Because in the end, we're not defined by our failures, but by how we rise from them, and rise we will together, stronger than ever before. For you, for those who served, for the promise of a better tomorrow, this is our mission, our duty, our honor. As Alex concluded his speech to the veterans, he paused, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. He looked directly at the audience, as if breaking through an invisible barrier. You know, throughout this journey, I've learned the power of voices coming together. Each story, each perspective has shaped our path forward. And now I'd like to hear from you, our wider community. If our story of redemption and second chances has resonated with you, if you believe in the power of making amends and standing up for what's right, I encourage you to show your support. Just as we're rebuilding trust with our veterans one day at a time, we're hoping to build a community of supporters who believe in our mission. Sarah often reminds me that change doesn't happen in isolation. It takes a collective effort, a chorus of voices saying, "We believe in this. We want to see more so. If you've found value in our story, if it's touched you in some way, we'd be honored if you'd subscribe to our channel." Your subscription is like a vote of confidence, telling us to keep pushing forward, to keep sharing these important stories. Now, I know my father would appreciate a more data-driven approach. So let's do this. If you've enjoyed our story and want to show your support, leave a comment with the number 1. It's a small gesture, but it means the world to us. And you know what? Mark Jennings always says we should be looking ahead, planning for the future. So if you're interested in hearing more, if you want to know what challenges and triumphs lie ahead for the Foundation and the veterans we serve, leave a comment with the number 2. Your interest fuels our determination to keep making a difference. Of course, we're not perfect. We're learning and growing every day. If there are parts of our story you disagree with, or if you have ideas on how we can do better, we want to hear those too. Leave your thoughts in the comments. After all, it was open, honest communication that got us this far. Remember, every subscription, every comment, every engagement helps amplify our message and supports our team's efforts to make a real difference in veterans' lives. As Tommy Alvarez would say, it's not just about watching, it's about being part of the change. So let's continue this journey together. Subscribe, engage, and be part of our mission to honor and support those who've served. Your voice matters, and together we can write the next chapter of this story.